If there is one thing I wish more women over 60 understood about joint stiffness, swollen legs, thinning skin, and that feeling that the body is losing some of its bounce and resilience, it is this. There is almost never one missing miracle nutrient behind all of it. And there is certainly not one food that suddenly makes years of stress, inflammation, poor sleep, low protein, inactivity, menopause, circulation issues, and natural aging disappear overnight. But I will say this with my whole heart. The body does respond to what you feed it consistently. And if you have been feeling as though your joints are stiffer, your legs look puffier, your skin is thinner, and your recovery is slower than it used to be, then the quality of your nourishment deserves a closer look. That is the real conversation I want to have with you tonight. Not fear, not magic, support. Because collagen has become one of those words that gets tossed around in the wellness world almost like a spell. Take this powder, drink this broth, eat this one thing, and suddenly your joints are 25 again. I do not talk that way, but I do believe collagen matters as part of the bigger structure of the body. Connective tissue matters, protein matters, vitamin C matters, muscle matters, circulation matters, hydration matters, and foods that support those systems can absolutely help women age with more comfort and strength. The key is not chasing one miracle food. The key is building a way of eating that helps the body repair and maintain itself as well as it can. So tonight, I want to walk you through several foods often talked about as collagen supportive, and I want to place them in the frame where they actually make sense. Because some of them may be useful, some may be overhyped, and all of them work best inside a body that is being cared for in a bigger way. Let us begin with eggs. I think eggs are one of the most unfairly misunderstood foods from the last few decades. So many women were taught to fear them. Fear the yolk, fear the cholesterol, fear anything rich and satisfying. And in the process, many ended up with breakfasts that never truly nourished them. Now, I am not telling every woman to eat eggs every day. Some people have reasons to be more careful, and personal medical context matters. But for many women, eggs can be a beautifully useful food. They provide protein, they are satisfying, and they bring nutrients the body needs to maintain tissues well. If your breakfast has been coffee and toast and a vague promise to be good, adding something as simple as eggs can change how your whole day feels. And that matters because the body repairs better when it is actually fed. The second food I want to mention is papaya. Now, I would never speak about one fruit as though it were a miracle cure, but I do think papaya is a lovely example of how plant foods can support the body in ways that go beyond calories. It is hydrating. It contains vitamin C, which matters for collagen formation. It is often easier to digest than some heavier foods, especially for women whose digestion feels more sensitive with age. And I think that is an important point. Collagen support is not just about eating collagen foods. It is also about giving the body the cofactors it needs to build and maintain connective tissue. Vitamin C-rich foods help with that. So do overall nourishment and digestion. If the body cannot absorb and use what you are giving it, then even good foods do not get to do much. That is why I always come back to the whole woman. How are you eating? How are you digesting? How are you sleeping? How are you moving? How inflamed is the body? How stressed is the body? Because that is where the real story lives. Now let us talk about chicken skin and bone-in skin-on poultry more broadly. This is one of those areas where wellness conversations can become very dramatic. Some people treat these parts of the animal as healing treasures. Others treat them as something to fear and throw away immediately. I think the truth is quieter. Slow-cooked poultry, broth made from skin-on and bone-in pieces, and meals that include connective tissue can absolutely be rich, comforting, traditional sources of gelatin and collagen-related compounds. And I think there is something beautiful about that, honestly. The body often responds well to old-fashioned nourishment. Soups, stews, homemade broths, slow-cooked meals that feel grounding and deeply supportive. But I do not want women hearing this and deciding they need to start eating piles of crispy skin as if that alone will fix swelling and stiff knees. The quality of the food matters. The way it is cooked matters. The overall diet matters. Deep-fried, heavily processed versions of these foods are not the same conversation as a pot of nourishing homemade broth simmered gently on the stove. That brings me naturally to sardines, which I think deserve their reputation far more than many trendy collagen products do. Sardines are not glamorous, but they are deeply useful. They bring protein. They bring omega-3 fats. They bring minerals. And if you eat the soft bones, they bring calcium too. For women over 60 who are trying to protect muscle, bones, circulation, and inflammation all at once, that is a pretty beautiful package in one small fish. And again, I think this is where the bigger picture matters. It is not that sardines are some magical anti-swelling cure. It is that when a woman regularly eats foods that lower inflammation, support circulation, and provide real nourishment, the body often feels less puffy, less achy, less fragile, and more supported. That is how change usually happens. Quietly, repeatedly, not in one dramatic before and after. I also want to talk about bone broth and marrow because these have become almost mythical in some corners of the wellness world. Do I think a well-made broth can be a lovely food? Absolutely. I think it can be comforting, hydrating, mineral-rich, soothing to the body, and an easy way for some older adults to take in nourishment, especially when appetite is low or chewing feels tiring. I think it can be a beautiful base for soups and stews. I think it fits naturally into a collagen-supportive way of eating. But no, I do not think bone broth is a miracle elixir that reverses all signs of aging. It is nourishment. And nourishment matters. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is exactly the right frame. Marrow is similar for me. Rich, traditional, deeply nourishing in small amounts, yes. But not something I would speak about as though it were essential for every woman or suitable in large amounts without thought. Some women may enjoy it and do well with it. Others may prefer broth or other protein-rich foods that feel lighter and easier to incorporate. There is no prize for forcing yourself to eat foods that do not fit your body or your culture just because wellness trends told you they are superior. What matters is consistency, not performance. Now let us talk about gelatin. This is one that can be surprisingly helpful for some people, especially because it is easy to incorporate. A little unflavored gelatin in a warm drink, in a homemade fruit gel, or in certain recipes may offer some of those collagen-related amino acids in a simple, usable form. But again, I want to keep us grounded. Gelatin is not a replacement for a good diet. It is not a replacement for protein, movement, and circulation. It is not a replacement for strength training or physical therapy when those are needed. It is an addition. And additions can matter. I feel the same way about liver, which is another food that creates strong reactions. Some women love it. Some cannot stand it. Some were told to avoid it for years and now do not know what to think. My view is this: liver is nutrient dense, very nutrient dense. And for women who tolerate it well and enjoy it occasionally, it can absolutely be part of a nourishing way of eating. But it is not mandatory, and I would never make a woman feel as though she is failing her body if she is not going to eat liver. There are many ways to nourish an older body well. The goal is not to become extreme. The goal is to become supported. And this is where I want to bring us back to the real heart of the matter. If your legs are swelling, if your joints feel stiff, if your skin seems thinner, if your recovery is slower, it may be tempting to believe that one collagen food is the missing link. But very often, the bigger issue is that the body has been under-supported for a while. Maybe protein has been too low. Maybe movement has become too little. Maybe circulation is poor because you sit for long stretches. Maybe sodium is high and potassium-rich whole foods are too low. Maybe hydration is off. Maybe sleep is poor. Maybe inflammation is louder because meals are built around processed food instead of nourishing food. Maybe muscle has quietly declined, and that is changing how everything feels. That is why I never want women chasing only the most exciting part of a health conversation. Yes, collagen-related foods may help, but they help best inside a bigger foundation. Protein at meals, vitamin C-rich fruits and vegetables, omega-3 rich foods, hydration, walking, strength training, good sleep, less all-day snacking on foods that inflame and undernourish, better circulation from actually using the body. This is the part people often do not want to hear because it is not sexy, but it is the truth. The body likes consistency far more than it likes gimmicks. I remember how desperate I felt in my own health struggles when I wanted one answer. One thing to explain why my body felt swollen, anxious, tired, inflamed, and unfamiliar. And what I learned humbly is that the body usually wants a pattern of care, not a heroic rescue. That is still how I think about food now. Not as miracle medicine, not as punishment, as support. So if I were helping a woman over 60 build a more collagen supportive, joint supportive, less puffy, more resilient way of eating, I would think in terms like this: eggs or another real protein source at breakfast, so the day begins with actual nourishment. Colorful produce that brings vitamin C and antioxidants. Fish like sardines or salmon a few times a week if that suits her. Broth-based soups and stews for comfort and connective tissue support. Enough total protein across the day to protect muscle. Hydrating foods like fruits, vegetables, soups, and yogurt. Less processed food that leaves the body inflamed and underfed. More walking so circulation is not stagnating all day long. Do you see how different that is from chasing one magic food? This is a life that loves your body back. And I want to say something tender here for the women who feel frustrated that their body no longer responds quickly. Please do not treat that as a personal failure. Bodies over 60 are often wiser, more sensitive, and less forgiving of neglect than they were at 30. That is not punishment. That is information. It means the basics matter more now. And honestly, I think that can be a gift, because it calls us back to what truly supports life. Real food, real movement, real rest, real care. Not shiny promises. You have spent your whole life caring for others. It is time to care for yourself. So if you have been wondering whether collagen-rich foods matter, my answer is yes, they can. But not as isolated miracles, as part of a nourishing pattern, as part of feeding the body what it needs to maintain strength, flexibility, and resilience, as part of lowering the overall burden on the body so it can repair more effectively. Age is just the beginning, my love. Vibrant doesn't have an age limit. And if your joints, legs, or skin have been asking for more support lately, I hope tonight helps you breathe a little easier. You do not need to buy into hype. You do not need to force yourself into some strange, rigid plan. You do not need to believe your body is simply falling apart. Start with nourishment. Start with consistency. Start with one better meal, one better pot of soup, one more walk, one more real breakfast, one more act of care. Because that is how the body begins to trust you again. That is how support becomes visible. And that is very often how comfort, strength, and resilience begin to return.